Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm thrilled to help introduce today's two-part webinar on creating coastal training programs and supporting Shore Friendly. My name is Matt Lurie, and I work for WDFW, where I am part of the National Estuary Program Habitat Strategic Initiative Lead Team, or HSIL, supporting the Shoreline Armoring Implementation Strategy. One quick housekeeping note, today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available shortly after the presentation. We are also planning on having some time for questions at the end, so please hold on to those questions for later. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, I work for the Habitat Strategic Initiative Lead Team, which is an interagency team supporting the National Estuary Program, co-led by Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and Washington Department of Natural Resources. Our focus is on advancing Puget Sound recovery through collaborative planning and strategic investments. We award grants through Puget Sound Geographic Funds, through a cooperative agreement with EPA in support of the Puget Sound Action Agenda and implementation strategies. One of the reasons this is exciting is because these dollars go towards traditionally difficult to fund actions that catalyze greater opportunities for recovery. Next slide, please. The work you will hear about today represents a continuation of long-standing investments of our program in promoting healthy shorelines along Puget Sound. As many of you are aware, approximately 1/3 of Puget Sound is lined with bulkheads and hard structures. These armored shorelines often disrupt critical physical processes like feeder bluffs, sediment transport, and beach stabilization, and can have cascading negative ecological impacts on food webs and biodiversity. The Shoreline Armoring Implementation Strategy, recently updated in 2021, identifies regional paths to reduce ecosystem impacts of hard armor and accelerate restoration to soft shore or natural shorelines. Next slide, please. I'm really happy to report that the Habitat Strategic Initiative Advisory Team recommended these two near-term actions that you were going to hear more about today from the 2018 to 2022 Puget Sound Action Agenda for funding in the 2019 funding round. Nicole Fagan and her team's projects fill a critical gap in ensuring that appropriate technical training for practitioners to design and implement ecologically friendly soft-shore techniques that also protect people and property is not only available, but also informed by the best available science. In addition, you will also hear about how Washington Sea Grant supported another successful program, Shore Friendly, helping ensure that there is a community of practitioners and leaders to interface with homeowners on shoreline management decisions. These type of activities are necessary to deal with the legacy of armor that exists today. Looking ahead, our team is very interested in hearing from this group and partners on how we continue to set the stage for future conversations about capacity to do shoreline work and engage with homeowners. Next slide, please. I will include the initial project fact sheet in the chat along with a link to our newly refreshed HSIL website for more connections. I really look forward to the discussion today, and I've shared my information here if folks would like to reach out. With that, it is going to be my great pleasure to introduce Nicole Fagan from Washington Sea Grant. For the audience at home, you are in for a real treat. Nicole has helped institutionalize and advance so much of the Shoreline's work in Puget Sound, and I can say her work has consistently been recommended to me as required reading. And with that, I think we can pass it along to Nicole. Go ahead.
So how do you protect your property from erosion, particularly as we are facing more and more coastal storms, rising seas, while avoiding those harmful impacts of armored shorelines? Well, homeowners want to turn to bulkheads, riprap, or other hard armoring solutions. And in fact, it's estimated, like Matt said, 30% of the 2,500 miles of shoreline in Washington are covered with armoring. So what can we do? What could each of us do? Who's responsible? How can we help? And where do you start? So these are the questions that are at the heart of today's webinar. My name is Nicole Fagan with Washington Sea Grant, where I help shoreline and coastal management specialists find solutions to their complex shoreline issues. And there are two parts to this effort today that are related to the protection and restoration of shoreline processes. First, we want to talk about and explain to our effort that's related to the protection of the creation of a training program for planners, marine contractors, and consultants to educate them on all aspects of the design and the permitting and the maintaining alternatives to bulkheads. Then second, we're going to tell about how we've provided additional support for the shore-friendly program managed by the Estuary and Salmon Recovery Program at WDFW, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. So with that, let's start with part one, which is an overview of the Marine Alternative Shoreline Training Program, or MAST. So going back to my very first question, which was, in the face of rising seas and increased shoreline erosion, if homeowners want to put up armor and it's harmful to the environment, what can we do? Well, one place to start is by providing training for those coastal planners and the contractors and the consultants. And this is an important piece of a broader strategy to advance shoreline armor removal efforts and to increase the use of the soft shore techniques throughout Puget Sound. There are already some courses that are being offered for planners and for contractors, but there's never been this take a step back and this comprehensive approach to inform what's appropriate for content and for the different groups and what's the most effective strategy for delivering that content. We have a great resource here in Washington. And as Matt was talking about, it's a great starting point. Back in 2014, DFW published its Marine Shoreline Design Guidelines, developed to help the professionals determine the need for shore protection and also identify best techniques for different sites. The guidelines are absolutely packed with valuable information, over 400 pages worth, but it became clear that more training is needed to help people apply these techniques and be able to apply them in a wide range of conditions. So today we're here to share with you how we've determined what are the critical issues that are needed to have a valuable training program for planners, for marine contractors, and consultants. We propose a series of 6 courses are needed to address the training needs of shoreline planners, consultants, and contractors. And we're going to tell you how we came to this conclusion and made this happen. I helped design the overall project, manage design of course content, and ensure that the proper instructors were selected.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Angel with Kathy Angel Communications, and I helped ensure that adult learning principles and effective slide design were incorporated into the trainings.
In 2019, we received a nearshore grant from the Habitat Strategic Initiative, and we had 3 main deliverables with this grant. First, develop a needs assessment. Second, create a training plan to address the alternatives to bulkheads. And third, develop 2 pilot courses for shoreline planners, consultants, and marine contractors. So who are these groups of people and why did we choose them to work with? Well, first of all, we have planners. Planners are those people who are working either local government, state government, or federal government, and their jobs are related to reviewing these applications that come in for projects that are for soft shore or other erosion control measure types of projects. Planners really need a clear understanding about how the regulations tie into all these processes, the shoreline processes, and to the regulations and the design. Then there's consultants, and consultants are those who are connected to the issues of soft shore work, but they could be coastal hazard specialists, or they could be environmental consultants, engineering, geologists, planning, permitting specialists, habitat restoration specialists, marine ecologists, and they need clear understanding about a site and what the site conditions are and what will lead to successful designs that can be permitted. And then finally, the third category is marine contractors. And there are really two groups of contractors when you're thinking about this. One is the contractors who do design and the build of the projects, and they need information not only about the site, but also similar things that you would need as the consultants need. But other contractors are only responsible for the actual construction of the project, and they work off of the designs that are prepared by an engineer or another designer. And in this case, they need a clear understanding about shoreline conditions and how the construction of a project impacts the shoreline and can provide erosion control. So in order to develop these courses, we prepared a needs assessment to determine what's the right way to develop training. And our first step in the needs assessment was, as oftentimes is the case, you create an advisory committee. So this committee consisted of 4 shoreline planners, 2 marine contractors, 6 consultants, and 10 managers of different shore-friendly programs and also subject matter experts. And they helped us to prioritize the list of potential training topics, which gave us a very strong starting point on possible content for this project. So then, as part of our scope of work for this needs assessment, we had suggested conducting a survey with our target audience. However, after we'd already started with our grant, we learned that a survey would not fit within the EPA's funding guidelines. So we had to get very creative. In our original proposal, conducting a survey of our target audience was one of the key things that was a deliverable. So we came up with the following ideas that to get together the necessary data. First of all, we used results from a 2019 survey that was conducted by the Coastal Training Program for the Marine Shoreline Design Guidelines, a course that is offered, and it was on essentially the same topics as what we were working with. Then in 2021, the Coastal Training Program and Washington Sea Grant helped us by doing a new survey, a shoreline stabilization survey, to test the interest in the courses topics we were suggesting that would be offered during from our study. And then we also conducted individual phone interviews with marine contractors, since surveys and the listservs that we use to contact people primarily got to shoreline planners and consultants, but not to this target audience of marine contractors. So then we also came up with something we hadn't thought about before, which actually was a great idea, which was a market analysis. And this was where we looked nationally at what had been done. So we looked at it, and we looked at what types of offshore training classes are being offered around the country and by whom. And then what topics are they offering? And then who are the experts that are being asked to be the speakers? And then what are the best ways and best practices used for design and delivery of these trainings? And this information provided us with so much research and information about to create our own program. So that based on then the information that we got from the needs assessment and from the market analysis and from working with our advisory committee, we determined there were 6 subjects, the areas that really needed to be covered in a training that should be divided into separate individual courses. And the topics are general concepts that are related to shorelines and stabilization, an overview of local and state federal permit requirements, how to address site assessments for the design and the construction of these sites, a demonstration of the need and how to conduct a risk assessment and an alternatives analysis. What are the actual techniques for erosion control, including construction materials and maintenance and incentive programs? And then finally, what are some of the sea level rise issues that need to be addressed? And we believe the subject for each of these courses builds upon the materials in the prior courses. And upon completion of the full series, a participant will have a really well-rounded base of knowledge about alternatives to bulkheads from the perspective of a planner, or a contractor, or a consultant. So we tested out these topics with our 3 audiences, and this is what we found from some differing levels of interest in these different 6 topics. Consultants were more interested in permitting or how to conduct a site assessment. Planners were more interested in the permitting and the demonstration of need, which is more of a regulatory issue. And then contractors were the most interested in learning about permitting and the general concepts. So with that information and that feedback, that helped us to define what would be our 2 pilot courses that we would focus on for the purposes of this grant. We selected general concepts because you might as well start at the very beginning, a good starting point, and permitting because that clearly was of interest to all 3 of our target audience groups. So we put all of the information that we'd gathered together into the Marine Shoreline Needs Assessment Report that was published in October 2021. And in that, we included results of all of the surveys and the interviews, all of the adult learning principles, which are critical to providing these kinds of trainings, the market analysis summary, recommendations for each of the course series, and then the proposed pilot projects. So with that, now I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, who's going to give you more detail about those 2 pilot courses.
So our first course was called General Concepts Related to Shorelines and Stabilization. This was a self-paced class, and one of the sentences in the course description read, "This course will help you become familiar with general topics related to coastal processes, shoreline vegetation, marine habitat, weather impacts, and climate change." Because based on our research, we found that it was really critical for people to understand these basic concepts before diving into solutions. We had a great slate of instructors. Ian Miller, coastal hazard specialist with Washington Sea Grant, Wendy Gerstel, engineering geologist and hydrogeologist with QWG Applied Geology, Corey Morse, an environmental engineer with the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife, Jeff Adams, marine ecologist with Washington Sea Grant, and finally Ben Alexander, who's a botanist with Sound Native Plants. We decided to develop the class in a platform called Moodle and offer it through the Coastal Training Program. And as you're probably aware, the Coastal Training Program is part of Department of Ecology and administered through the Padilla Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. And we decided to choose Moodle for a couple reasons. One is that it's tried and true. It's been around a long time. It's very robust. And also, the national partners of the Coastal Training Program at NOAA use this platform for self-paced training. And also this, and actually because of that, this platform was approved for use by the Department of Ecology. So this was what once we collected all the information from everybody and materials, I put it together in Moodle. And so this is what you would see when you went to the first page. And to give you an idea, people would this first page included the welcome and instructions from Sarah Brostrom with the Coastal Training Program, course introduction by Nicole that gave a little bit of background about this series, Unit 1, and then Unit 2, Unit 3. So a participant could click on any of these units, and then they'd be brought to a page that looked like this, where they could then watch a video on each of these sections. And these were great. These were presentations that were recorded in Zoom, and then the link was embedded in Moodle so that people could easily watch the videos. Then beneath the videos, there were a couple other things like handouts, a knowledge check. So after every unit, we wanted to be sure and test people's knowledge while it was fresh and kind of help them, think about it one more time. And so we offered a little quiz, and they had to get 8 out of 10 points. They could take it as many times as they needed, but they needed to get 8 points to pass that unit. And then there was also an option for people to have a discussion in the discussion forum. There were 58 total people who registered for this class, but within our audience, there were 22 shoreline planners, 21 consultants, 6 marine contractors. So a total of 44 out of 58 people actually completed the self-paced course, and 42 people filled out the survey. And this, just so you know, this was open. It was left open for a little over a month so that people could have time to go and take this class at their own pace. And it was the equivalent of about a one-day class. In our survey, we asked them, was this course a good use of your time? And 95% said yes. We also asked them, was the content useful? And 95% of them said it was either useful all the way up to extremely useful. We also asked, how do you intend to apply what you've learned? And here are just a few examples of comments that came back for people. Being able to identify slope stability on site visits and determine if bulkheads are really necessary. Helping applicants identify plant species they can use for soft shore armoring instead of bulkheads. This will help me to better explain things to the public. We asked them, what did you like best? The speakers, presentations, and materials were wonderful. I thought it was well organized. I enjoyed the video and the quizzes. I enjoyed that I could do it at my own pace and rewind when I needed to re-listen to a section. And the real-life examples were great. We also asked if they thought the coastal training program should offer additional self-paced classes. And the feedback we got was pretty much a resounding yes. People really liked this idea of having self-paced classes. They liked being able to do it in a time that was convenient for them. But there were lots of comments that said, but we don't want self-paced classes to replace in-person classes. But a nice mix and balance of them would be great. Now, course number 2 was a one-day class divided into 2 half days. This was offered virtually, and this was an overview of local, state, and federal permits. And a sentence out of the course description reads, this class will help you understand which permits are required for different activities in the marine shoreline and how they relate to different levels of government. And again, we had a great slate of instructors. Sydney Fishman, who's a planner with Washington State Department of Ecology. Nam Su is an area habitat biologist with the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife. Jenny Rotston is the Chief Operating Officer with Sea Level Bulkhead Builders. We really wanted that private industry to be represented here. Diane Hennessy, Senior Ecologist and Wetland Specialist with the Department of Ecology, who's on assignment to Environmental Protection Agency. And Lance Wolwaj is the Assistant State Archaeologist with the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. We offered this class through Zoom, and one thing that was really important to us was that this class not just be a series of lectures for people. We wanted it to be interactive, so we made a real point of utilizing the Zoom tools for just added engagement with the participants. So we did things like we offered polls throughout the class. We offered knowledge checks as well after each unit. We gave people a chance to go into breakout rooms so they could connect with each other in small groups. We asked questions that people could answer in the chat. So there was lots of engagement going on throughout. Here are just a few screenshots. Sydney Fishman talked about local permits. Nam Su talked about state permits. Diane Hennessy talked about national permits. Lance Wolwaj talked about permitting from a cultural resources perspective, and people found this extremely helpful. And then Jenny Rotston was able to actually give some on-the-ground examples to really make this material that the other instructors were come alive and just really make it real for people who were attending the class. On the second day, Nicole led a panel discussion with the instructors, and Dan Krins, who's with the Army Corps of Engineers, engineers also was able to join us that day for that panel discussion because he had some added insights around federal permitting. And you can see not only were the panelists able to offer and answer people's questions live, they were also answering them over in the chat as well. So it was a very dynamic panel discussion. And then Nicole wrapped it all up by reminding everybody kind of the high points of what they'd learned. So in this course, we had 12 shoreline planners, 17 consultants, 4 marine contractors. So a total completed the class 33, and the number who filled out the survey was 19. And here's some of the results from the survey. We also asked them, was this a good use of their time? 100% said yes. Was the content useful? 98% said it was useful to extremely useful. We asked them, how do you intend to apply? Here are just a few examples. Seeing all the affiliates as partners, including tribes. I'll be more willing to bring up soft shore alternatives when a project manager proposes hard armoring. I will encourage early involvement of the tribes and more of a comprehensive application packet. What did you like best? The overall structure of the class and variety of speakers, getting to see the reviewers and understand their interpretation of code sections, and real-world examples with current professionals. The interactive panel discussion with the chat questions.
So overall, there's some lessons that we learned from this that we want to share with you. So first of all, use of survey instruments. Well, before you start writing up a grant proposal, be sure to determine if there's going to be any restrictions on your use of surveys. That said, because we didn't realize we couldn't use them and that was written into us, ours is a way to find out really what we needed to know from our audiences that we were trying to target. We found some real creative workarounds and they worked, and we got the great information. We were able to test whether we were on target. So there's ways around the hurdle. Second, we had to learn about how to connecting to the marine contractors. It's not an audience that, it was a very important audience for the study, but it's not an audience that typically shows up on the listservs for Shoreline Coastal Planner Group or the Coastal Training Program or any of the typical distribution lists, and they really don't even have their own distribution list. So it made it a big challenge of how do you connect with them to make sure that they're included, invited, and understand about the training. I would say that this is something that would be really beneficial to be looking towards how to connect and create lists that for greater distribution for in the future.
So I'll cover working with instructors. We had 5 instructors for each class, and we felt that these instructors added so much richness and breadth to our classes. There were some logistical issues of getting them together because they're all very busy people. So often we weren't able to get everybody scheduled for a meeting at the same time. So we would have to have multiple meetings or meet one-on-one with people. The other challenge was just to make sure that the PowerPoint presentations all looked consistent and employed best practices for slide design and also adult learning principles. And so we tried to help this effort by designing a template that we gave to all the instructors just to help them along with these things. And so that helped them put together a first draft. And then I was able to work with those different drafts and kind of pull them together and help with that final design. And so that was just a big thing that was just to make note of, is that it worked out really well, but you definitely need one person to kind of take it all and pull it all together and make sure it all looks consistent and is all equally effective. The next one was the use of Moodle, and I'll just say about that there's a big need for self-paced classes. We got a huge positive response from offering a class this way. So this was the first time a self-paced class had ever been offered in any coastal training program in the whole reserve system. There are 30 of these programs around the country. And so this was the first one. And so we knew that it was very likely that this self-paced class was going to become a model for the country and would need to be easily replicated. And so the goal in designing this class and modal was to make it clean and simple and easy to replicate.
So the bottom line from all of this effort is a series of 6 courses are needed to address the training needs of shoreline planners, consultants, and the marine contractors. And of course, there are a few next steps for this exercise. And here's what Kathy and I think. We need to continue the series with the Coastal Training Program. WDFW, I say could, but I almost want to say should co-sponsor the series to support shore-friendly efforts. There should be funding to build out and to deliver all 6 of the courses. We only did 2 of those 6. Ensure funding to pay instructors who are not government employees. And that was very important, that we didn't just have state or local government or federal government agency people. We had contractors, consultants, people who have field experience. And we heard that a lot as we were putting this together, is don't just have the government talking at us. We want to hear both sides of the story. So that was very important. And you need to be able to pay people. And then developing a certification process, some sort of way that we can keep lists of people who've been through this and being able to certify that they've taken all of the courses and that you've got people with learning. And there's a lot of different things that can be done. We've talked with WDFW about maintaining a list. So that's something that needs to be explored further. And then create the series that's going to be offered on an annually. So that's important as well. All right, with that, we're going to turn to part 2 of the grant, and that was providing support for the shore-friendly program. So the first issue here is to make sure everyone's familiar with shore-friendly. They don't want to make this assumption. So shore-friendly, it's an incentive program that is for private landowners from marine shorelines in Puget Sound that was originally developed, and it was funded in 2014. And now it's administered through grants through WDFW, Department of Fish and Wildlife. And the goals of the program are to reduce shoreline armor and restore shoreline habitat across the Sound for fish, wildlife, and communities. So WDFW's next, the restoration estuary and salmon restoration program, the ESRP, works together with their 6 local organizations that are throughout Puget Sound who are implementing the shore-friendly program. So these individual programs provide direct support to the landowners, while the folks at DFW in the ESRP program provide program oversight and the coordination. And meanwhile, there are so many other issues that need to be addressed that concern all of the programs and are apply region-wide. So that's where Washington Sea Grant came in. There is a need for this additional support for the shore-friendly program to help it expand and to grow. And here are 3 ways we started to provide that support as part of this grant effort. First of all, developing a local shoreline planners work group, collaborating with the British Columbia's Green Shores program, facilitating a shore-friendly advisory committee. So the Shoreline Local Government Working Group. The purpose of the group has been to bring together local shoreline planners that are across the Puget Sound region to share resources and to identify information needs and support one another in the work that's related to alternatives to shoreline stabilization, particularly those that are related to shore-friendly efforts. There's lots of support for the people who are doing the direct delivery and for running the programs, but the planners are the ones who are having to review these, and they didn't have any support. So that's where we saw that there was this need to create this work group. And over a 2-year period, the group met 10 times. And we had a really good mix of participants, 60% counties, 12% cities, 12% state agencies, which was ecology and Department of Fish and Wildlife. And then we even had tribe participation. And at each of the meetings, we would talk about what different topics, and asked what people were interested in. What topic do you want to talk about? What do you want to address? So here's some examples. One of them was geotechnical reports, how to read them or not. Then another one was on the geology of shorelines and steep slopes, and how does that apply to your review of a project. And then another one was on how to conduct an alternatives analysis. And this was tied in not only with what local government was doing, but also with what Department of Fish and Wildlife is currently working on with respect to alternative analysis for the hydraulic project approval. So we then surveyed the group and said, so how useful was it to participate in the Shoreline Local Government Working Group? 90% said it was useful. And then we asked, would you be interested in continuing to participate in the Shoreline Local Government Working Group? Well, 100% said yes. That's a good result. So, okay, so then another aspect of supporting Shore Friendly involved the cross-boundary collaboration with British Columbia. So Green Choice for Homes is a voluntary incentive-based rating program to reduce armor and restore shorelines that's run by the Stewardship Center for British Columbia. This BC program has developed its very own training efforts, and it has the local government working group, and it has technical review processes that apply both for residential and for non-residential projects. And there are many commonalities that are between the two efforts of what's going on with Shore Friendly and with Green Shores. So participation in these monthly calls that were part of the BC Green Shores Working Group allowed for an amazing sharing of resources. For example, there's checklists that have been created for the Green Shores program, and those are now being offered and applied through the Shore Friendly program. Finally, through this grant, we established a Shore Friendly Advisory Committee. There are 10 members for this advisory committee, representing leadership from Department of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Ecology, Northwest Straits, local government, Washington Environmental Council. We have a homeowner who has actually been participated in the Shore Friendly program and reached people who are doing research on social marketing and social issues, social science issues. So the role of the Shore Friendly Advisory Committee is make recommendations and provide key information or bring resources to the group, and then also to provide strategic planning support for the local Shore Friendly programs or the staff at WDFW Shore Friendly program. All of these efforts led to one very important lesson, that the Shore Friendly effort, for it to grow and to develop, really needs support in many different ways. And the WDF staff is just doing an amazing job, at all the different working with all the different funded programs, and they're limited in their capacity. So where possible, additional support here are some of the things they need additional support. And here's some of the things that we learned through this grant. First of all, providing a support group for the shoreline planners is really an important effort. WDFW is funded and it's supporting the Shore Friendly programs that are helping the homeowners and providing that direct support to implement projects. But on the other end, the planners really need to review these projects and they need to be supported. So this work group was able to do that. Next, staying connected to the BC effort is really helpful. We're all aiming for the same goal to protect and restore our shorelines. And maybe we may be coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective and with different regulations and different approaches, but we can learn from one another and trade useful information about how to run these programs and work with homeowners and to encourage them to make changes. And finally, the advisory committee is really useful support for the Shore Friendly program. And while there are incredibly bright people working extremely hard to manage grants and start and work with the direct delivery programs, there's this real value to have this group of people who are outside of that world and who have a much bigger picture and can provide guidance and inspiration. Bottom line, there's a need for additional support for the Shore Friendly program to help it grow and to expand. So back to the original question I've asked is, where can some of us start to protect and restore shoreline processes if we're not the scientists, or we're not the project designers, or if we're not the ones on the ground doing the work? So first, we can create a training program such as our series of 6 courses to address the training needs of shoreline planners, consultants, and marine contractors. And next, we can provide support to the Shore Friendly program. We can develop a local shoreline planners work group. We can maintain the collaboration with BC's Green Shores program. We can support a Shore Friendly advisory committee, and we can explore additional ways to provide support on a regional-wide basis for the Shore Friendly program. So Kathy and I would really like to thank Matt Lurie and Teresa Miskovich and Jennifer Griffith, along with all of the others who are at the Habitat Strategic Initiative Grant Program, who've supported our work and helped us to get to this point where we can tell you about our work. And then a huge thank you to Sarah Brostrom at the Coastal Training Program for all your amazing work and effort and support in continuing to be our partner in offering these trainings. And thank you to Jay Krenitz and Jenna Jewett and all of the incredible people who are working with the Shore Friendly program. Your dedication to this work is moving the state so far forward. We can only hope to keep up with all of you. And with that, we are open for questions.
Thank you, Nicole and Kathy. That was amazing as always. Big round of applause. I think for me, it's so critical to hear about kind of the nitty-gritty of providing trainings. I hear even in the last year, a lot of people commenting on, we need more technical capacity, but then having that understanding of what is actually needed to go into that and doing the due diligence to do it the right way, I think is just so important. So I'm an educator in another lifetime, and so I am so happy of all the work that goes on to do this in the long term. And I know we probably have a lot to talk about, but if folks had questions they'd like to ask Nicole and Kathy, if you could please raise your hand and I will call on you if I see them, or if Kathy also sees something important in the chat, let me know. I think there's a lot, certainly a lot we could talk about. I don't know if anybody has a question. Oh, that's a long one in the chat. I can't read it quick enough.
Okay, I'll take it on.
Okay, go for it.
All right, Kara. All right, you may not like my answer though. What incentives are there to bring more private contractors into these trainings? I think you mentioned paying people for their time, which is one way. Also, what are the incentives for those contractors to take what they learn and encourage shoreline owners to look towards soft shoreline options? From my previous experience, these contractors were often the first people that shoreline owners reached out to, often before county staff or consultants, and where the planning or permitting process really began. And Kara, that's a great question. And actually, I thought you were going to go a little different direction, so which is fun. But what was interesting is, well, there's kind of 2 answers I'm going to give to that. First is how to get people to the table. And so we were looking at, that's one of the reasons we reached out directly, and those phone interviews were really insightful, talking with the contractors and saying, so what is it going to take you? First of all, are you even interested? Do you know anything about this? Are you interested? And some of the people were really grumpy. To be honest, some of them were like, yeah, no, I'm not going to take a class. Other people were really open-minded and said, yeah, I'd like to learn about that. To get people to the table, some of it we found was just a matter of timing. you're not being paid for your time if you're a contractor or consultant to take these kinds of classes. So that was one of the reasons we wanted to test out the self-paced work. And we would encourage more of that because I think that helps. The other incentive, I don't think we were talking about paying contractors. We were talking about paying the instructors, but some people said they were interested in the certification. Some of, it's being able to put a stamp that says you're shore friendly on your business card, or to be able to say that you've got this background. There's some work that needs to be done on how do you provide that kind of certification, because there's some legal restrictions that you really can't certify, because then you're starting to certify the project, and all we're trying to do is certify that somebody has taken the course. And this is going to something that's I also talked about, which is collaboration with BC and the Green Shores program, because we've talked about this back and forth a lot, and they're exploring different ways for doing that. We are exploring. And so staying in touch with the folks in BC and the work that they're doing has been really, really valuable. And it might be really instructive to learn about where they're thinking we might be able to go in terms of being able to bring people to the table. That said, I think that you're right that the first stop is that people are oftentimes going to the contractors first. So it's trying to get to them as many times and in as many ways as you can. I don't think that this is the trainings are the end all be all. I think it's one step. And it's like I was saying, trying to get to them in the first place is a challenge. And just some background of how I did that was I actually went to the Shore Friendly program leads who are putting out RFPs, and then people will respond for projects, and they have contractors responding. And so I had them give me the lists of all the contractors who were responding to their RFPs. Sometimes I had contact information, and sometimes I just had names. But that's, I think, would be something that's really worthwhile, is spending a little bit more time trying to figure that out. And then the other is just the more education. It was really interesting and instructive. If I had made those phone calls to these contractors 10 years ago in the work that we're doing, I don't think I would have had the response I had, which was a lot of people already knew what some of the issues were, and they're being faced it. So you're coming at it from the regulatory side, so they're getting it from there. You're coming at it from the social marketing side, so they're getting it from there. And then you're getting it from the training side. So there's all these different ways that you come at it, and I don't think there's one answer. And so this is just a piece of the puzzle.
Great. I have a slight, maybe a follow-up, or it's related, was when you were conducting the needs assessment part of part one here, like, did you get I saw that towards the end you said, oh, you proposed maybe annual trainings. Did you get a sense that, was that deliberate, that the community needed an annual training, or does it need to be more than that? Like, not only how did you maybe figure it out, but what would you propose given what exists here in Puget Sound?
Kathy, you want to talk because Kathy's background is having managed the coastal training program for 20 years. And so she really knows how you sense what the needs are. So why don't you talk about that aspect of providing trainings?
We get a real good sense on interest by how many people sign up, like for that first class. So do we end up with a lot of people on the waiting list, or do we have people send messages in that say, oh, I wanted to take this, but I wasn't available on this particular day or whatever. And so we kind of get a sense that way. But typically when you offer a brand new class, you can usually pretty much count on offering it once or twice a year, and until you start seeing the numbers sort of fall down. And so we think there's still enough interest in this, and also that as new people find out about it, there are opportunities for them to take those earlier classes and then start adding on the later classes too. So we think it would just be ideal if at least for the first few years that the majority of the classes could be offered consistently until you kind of see that the numbers are really starting to drop. And then at that point, you might do something like record them and have them all available as recorded classes that people could take at random. And this kind of also relates to a question that just came in, which from Lucas, which was, I'm curious if the 2 courses are still available on Moodle and if we can access them currently. So the first class, the self-paced class, was the only one designed in Moodle because that's a self-paced platform. It is available, and I think that Sarah Bostrom will probably end up offering it again in the fall, because at this point it's just a click of a button, offering it, because it's all been designed and it's mostly ready to go. The second class would just have to be coordinating with those instructors and offering it again virtually.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, there's probably a lot of people who would benefit from this. And then you also were talking about, how do people, how are they first approached for it? So I was thinking, oh, there's probably an outreach component, as well, to try to reach some people who might not be on all the right listservs and things, but would still have some value. I see a longer question in the chat, and I just can't, again, I'm not good at this. I can't read it quick enough.
Have you thought, I'll read it because, I'll take that one on. Yep. Okay, so have you thought about a course or materials for lay property owners to sell soft shore armoring concepts? Something like that would be beneficial for condo owners and are beneficial and our neighbors, and made life a lot easier for our partners, as they would have less they would need to explain. Municipal, state, and federal agencies should not be the enemies that they are often made out to be. And a baseline understanding could help prevent that. And so, Troy, thank you very much for that question. And in answer to that, one thing that's interesting is the Shore Friendly program provides trainings for homeowners and for the public in general. And I think that it's not saying that there's two different levels of these kinds of trainings, and there was this gap that was perceived with the audience that we were taking on. I think that anybody could have signed up for this class. We weren't saying, you can't sign up unless you fit one of these profiles. So the courses are available. Part of that is identifying people. But along the line of what you're saying is part of this education effort, which is not just the planners, the contractors, and consultants, it is the homeowners. And one of the beauties of the Shore Friendly program, which has just been incredible, is we have the centralized DFW administration. And then, like I said, there are 6 programs. There's Northwest Straits that's covering all of the northern Puget Sound. You have the Swinomish, who have one for the all Swinomish properties. You have Island County, you have Kitsap County, you have Mason, Thurston, Pierce, King, and Mid-Sound, and I'm embarrassed if I forgot one, but basically we have programs that are now in throughout all of this Puget Sound area, which did not exist prior to the way the Shore Friendly program has been set up. And the efforts are to see how that those training programs are getting out into the community in this really broad reaching place. And then recognizing what we were doing is, but then you have to train the trainers, because there's lots of different people who need information. The other is people talk about real estate agents. Do they need training? And so there's all these different ways. And that goes to, how do you support the Shore Friendly program? How do you provide more trainings? And what should you be doing? So I think it's a great question. And I think there's a lot of good information out there. There was a question about what type of support do you provide to shoreline planners under Shore Friendly. And so that is what the Shoreline Local Government Working Group really was. It was looking at local government shoreline planners who were reviewing projects and putting together that work group. And so there would be 10 of us who would meet and compare notes and say, how are you addressing this issue? And how's the other person addressing issues, and then how can you compare notes? So for example, something they were doing in Kitsap County, a great example there is in that case was a It came up during one of the meetings where DFW Habitat Bio had put together an agreement with the Kitsap County about how they would work together on these projects. It was a great example that somebody in San Juan County wouldn't have known about, except for that they were in this meeting together so that they could share information about it. What are the plans for the other 4 proposed courses? Are they in development or need funding secured, or both? Thank you for asking that. And that's a sort of a pitch here. So yes, they are planned. The information is all out there. It is organized. We have essentially all the topic area. We even have suggested instructors. So we've already thought through, based on all of we've got for feedback from our advisory committees, of what should be the information that's shared during those courses. One of the things, how that's going to be filled out, I'm not exactly sure. I believe that Sea Grant is going to be willing to take on the build out of those new courses in part. I know the Coastal Training Program, thank you, Sarah, is willing to be a support for that. And also then DFW has said that they would be willing to support that. There's probably going to be a need for some funding. I absolutely think that to do this right, you've got to pay instructors. The role Kathy played in pulling it together to make this look like a real consistent, well-organized program, that, things like that, you need to pay for it. So I think we're looking at funding that would be needed to pay for it and to take it forward to complete it. And if I had my way, we would have done all 4, but Kathy and I just didn't have time for all 4. And also we wanted to play with and demonstrate that through one of the classes, how it can be done as an online self-paced. So that was a very important part of this project too.
Well, with that, we've used up a lot of our time. We maybe have time for one more question, but I want to just thank both of our speakers, Kathy and Nicole, for a wonderful presentation. It's really exciting work, and I hope we can all on the call find ways to, continue these efforts and keep the momentum going. Nicole or Kathy, do you have any final thoughts or last thought you'd like to share? Okay, if not.
Kathy, you want to go first?
Oh, sure. We really enjoyed the whole grant process and just appreciated all the support we received from the instructors, from the funders, and from Coastal Training Program for sure. And so I think there's a good future for this project with the proper resources put behind it. And of course, working with Nicole was fantastic. That was as she's rolling into retirement in a week or 2. This was a wonderful way to spend time with her the last 2 years too.
Well, I want to thank everybody who's been part of the group of working with us again. I mean, it really, thank you. Well, thank you, Jennifer, from the get-go of saying this is important and so long ago, encouraging us to look at this. And thank you for everybody who's been supporting us. Thank you, Kathy, who's been just bringing the idea of learning principles, but also for all of you who are on this call, because I'm kind of monitoring who's out there. I know who you are, and I know what you all are doing. And all I can say is it's because of the work that you all are doing that's why this is all possible. And keep up doing that amazing work, because we are making progress. So thank you all very much.
Well, I think that's a great way to end. We're making a lot of progress with help from a lot of folks, and just thank you again. So I think we can end there.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks,
everybody for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming.